Hi, welcome back to the Tori Nook Show, where real conversations meet real success. I'm Tori Nook, the CEO and founder of Anchor Retail. I'm an entrepreneur, wife, and mother of three. In each episode, I feature leaders, entrepreneurs, and creators who've built their successful careers and lives with intention, intuition, and a strong sense of who they are. We talk about decisions that shape a life, the moments that test you, and the habits and mindset that keep you moving forward. My goal is to learn how people create success on their own terms and to share those insights with all of you. I hope you enjoy the show. And today I've got Bethany Babcock joining me, which is very exciting. She is another woman in our industry of commercial real estate who owns her own firms down in Texas. And she's the founder of Foresite Real Estate. It is nationally recognized leader in commercial real estate. She has more than 20 years experience spanning from leasing to property management, investment sales. She's also one of the few brokers in San Antonio to earn a national recognition in multiple categories. And she's also been named one of San Antonio Business Journal's 40 under 40. And she built a company recognized as the number one best place to work. And on top of it, she's also launched an amazing program called the CRE Launch program. And this helps develop the next generation in our industry across universities and brokerage firms nationwide. Bethany is also a mom of three. She's a mentor, a board member, and someone who's deeply committed to building with integrity and intention in what she does. So, welcome to the show,
Hey,
Bethany.
quite the intro. I'm like, who's
Yeah.
that?
Well, I actually had to cut it down a little because you have a lot of accomplishments, but I definitely want to focus on talking about you as a woman in business and commercial real estate. Also, the fact, you're a mom, you're like me, you're married, you had three kids like me too. And, you're very active also on social media. You're big on X. So if anyone's not following Bethany on X, like definitely get on. She's got a lot to say and a lot of good things to say to learn from, actually. Um, and I also was introduced to you. I was told to call you by a broker friend of mine who's in the Bob Knackle like think tank group that I'm in, his affiliate program. And that's how I heard about you. Actually, not from social media, but from a broker out of Boston. And he's the one who told me about your CRE launch, which I want to get into because just like when every state where we get licensed to be real estate agents and brokers, they don't teach about commercial real estate. Like they're huge residential focused. And it's always been up to the brokerage houses, the commercial brokerage houses, whether they're international, national, regional, or local boutiques, to teach people brokerage. You know, they have no idea how to budget money. They don't know how to really research anything. Like they have zero training. So pretty much what you launched is like a mini MBA, which I obviously want to get way, deeper into considering it's launching this June 2026 for 10 weeks, and it will be in multiple states, including Cleveland, Ohio. You could go on the CRE Launch website to learn more about it. But, you know, one of the things I wanted to dig into is, when you look back at like your early years in real estate, what, and I know from talking to you, like you've been through a lot like me, some interesting places you've worked, but how did those experiences, not getting into the detail of them, but how did those experiences really teach you about like who you are, but not just as like a professional, but as a person?
Each one of those experiences taught me a little bit different lesson. And so I don't know, I'd have to look at each particular one. But overall, I think it just gave me a very long term perspective that gave me a motto. I could kind of repeat that to myself that it's a season, and look for the long term. I definitely think faith has helped me a lot in that regard because it gives me a very long term perspective beyond 5 or even 10 or 20 or even this lifetime. And so I'm able to look really long term and delay gratification, but also just look at big picture. What's the goal here? And that has helped a lot because several times throughout my career, there were challenges where it felt like, okay, this is it. I hit a wall. We're at the end, and zooming out a little bit and realizing, no, not quite. We're not there yet. Not time to say quit yet.
What made you think, what was the catalyst for you to go build something on your own?
Yeah. So when I was working at a national brokerage firm doing investment sales, I was at a firm that didn't do management or leasing. And my mentor and partner, we had partnered up on all of our deals together. After a while, he was encouraging me to leave and start a leasing and management company. And he's like, go do this, and then I can send you leasing and management business. You can send me back the sale. And the idea was that we would refer business back and forth to each other because we had been referring it out to other companies that didn't really understand what they were doing on the leasing and management side and how it impacted the sale. So we would get back assignments that were messed up and actually worth less sometimes because of the way the leases were set up. And so he was frustrated. We couldn't really find a good referral partner. And because I had done management before, he was encouraging me to go out and start. Very much opposed to it. I thought I had earned my stripes in investment sales, and I thought I was the bee's knees, that I had made it. And I was so proud of myself. And really, it took some big shockwaves in my personal life of becoming a mom and suddenly taking care of my own mom who was sick, and like all these things coming together that I was like, okay, something has to give.
Right.
And quite foolishly, I thought I'd have more free time if I started a business, which is
That's
hilarious now,
funny. Yeah.
what I was thinking.
Right.
But once I realized that that was really quite stupid of me to think, I knew that if I worked really, really hard for a period of time, that there would be light at the end of the tunnel. And my goal was that if I worked extremely hard, by the time my oldest son was in kindergarten, my goal was to be able to leave the office at 3:30 and be the one to pick him up every day. And we worked backwards from there in terms of staffing, in terms of how to set up the company. And I knew that I had to put in a lot of hours up front to make that work. I had another couple of kids in the meanwhile. And ultimately, the day he started kindergarten, I was able to go to that schedule. And that was a big deal.
So he was 5, so you only had 1 child when you started the business?
Yes. He was six
Okay.
months old.
Okay, got it. I give you credit because I like how the fact it's kind of like even like financial goals, like start with the number, like you started with a time, like when you wanted to leave. And I think so many people don't do that. Like they're just into being like these, 12-hour a day like workhorses versus realizing like in our business, being an entrepreneur, you can set it up where yeah, you might leave at 3:30, but you might start at 7 and then you might be probably going back to work at 9 or 8. And that's what people don't
Shift.
realize. Yeah, exactly. And you make all your phone calls, the important ones during that day, say you're working like 7 to 3:30 or whatnot. I was curious too because I have to laugh because I mean, I was even talking to someone yesterday and it's just so funny how culture can be faked, right? With a lot of brokerages and any business, right? They pose one way in social media, you go interview with them, they say they're X, and then you get in there and it's like, what did I just marry and get myself into, right? So, what kind of environment for you when you founded Foresight? What kind of environment did you want to create that you hadn't experienced elsewhere?
That's a good question because I'm going to be completely honest. When starting Foresight, when people use the word culture, in my mind, I got images of ping pong tables and lunch buffets at Google, and I kind of thought the term culture seemed a little hype-ish.
Mhm.
And I didn't really understand the significance or even what we were actually building in terms of culture and how it could define the company. And so again, it was a building backwards thing. And it was, I need the flexibility. I need an environment that I can thrive in my family. And if I'm creating that for myself, I'm creating that for others too. But another thing that was really key is I had come from a really bad experience on the property management side very early in my career, where I worked for a client that really no one should ever have to work for that kind of environment. And so I was very nervous about starting a management company and leasing company where I might have to be put in that position again or put others in that position. And so one of the things that we created at the company was just a boundary system where it was basically that if you have a good reason, we can turn down a client, and we're going to allow our managers to have say in the clients that we are not going to renew our contracts with in the next year. And we haven't had to do that very many times, but there have been a couple. And so the fact that the team knows that we put our money where our mouth is, where we're like, the team is the most important thing. Yes, clients come first, but in
Right.
the end, it's a lot easier to replace a client than it is a high caliber, very experienced property manager. So I'm not going to burn
100%.
through them because someone's abusing them. So putting
Mhm.
boundaries in place. And that has created a culture where we've been able to recruit some really high caliber people. And, and so as we kind of look around, we're like, oh, okay, this is our culture. This is who we are. And we were kind of learning it, who we are and who we evolved into being over the years. But it really came as a reflection of all of our past experiences and what didn't work for us. And then everyone coming together and building something around that where we wanted to work, where we wanted to spend time with. And it's just as important who you hire as who you decide to invite to move on, right? Those
100%.
don't create that kind of environment where you want to show up each day. So I think it's as much about what you do as what you don't do and building a
Exactly.
culture.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm actually even shocked by how some companies, they'll just hire anyone just to hire them, and even some are high net producers, but that high net producer could be a total cancer, as I would say, in your office, and then infect everyone else to get sick and leave technically, right? Where, you're really protecting the value, your personal values, bringing them at the office. And I agree with you. I always say you never have to sell yourself to the devil to succeed, right? You can Boundaries are the most important thing, and I think when you're younger, unless you had parents that taught you them, you really don't have boundaries. A lot of women, I think too, and even guys, like, they're yes men, yes women, and, that's not the way you're ever gonna get where you wanna be in life or be in a happy place at work or in a personal relationship. Like, you've gotta be outspoken, like, "This is what I want." Considering you've been I mean, I think it's amazing that, you're one of the best places to work in Texas for a CRE firm. Like, what do you believe that people, and I feel like we touched on it, but I mean, if there's even more to it, like that they're really craving just in general in their workplaces right now? Because you talk to a ton of people like I do. I'm just curious what you hear.
They use the term work family a lot. You hear that a lot. And I'm
Right.
hesitant to use the term myself because it sounds like I'm trying to put a label on us and say, that's who we are, we're work family. It feels different when I say it, but
Mhm.
I love hearing it when other people in the office say it. And I'm
Yeah.
proud of that. And getting best places to work in San Antonio for a few years in a row was really, that was one of the things I was most proud of because that was an employee voted thing. They voted. They're the ones that said, this is what we think about our company. And I didn't get to have any say and I didn't get to see it, what they were saying about us. And so that was a really fun thing for me to see. I think it really comes down to what do they want to see? I think they want to feel respected. I think they
Mhm.
want to feel challenged. I think they
Mhm.
want to enjoy who they work with. So, you mentioned sometimes the right players, even if they are high producers, encouraging them to go elsewhere. We've had to do that. And in the end, it's the right choice. And so because we want to be a reflection to why this company was started in the first place, which was to serve the clients in a way that we could feel by improving the value they're building, not being so deal focused and commission focused that we were jeopardizing the value of the property or the client. And so it all backs into that. And being able to work in an environment where we feel free to talk about our deals and knowing that the other person isn't going to come in and swoop in,
Yep. You don't have
working
to
in an
hide under the
environment,
desk.
yeah, working in an environment where we can say, Mr. Client, I don't think you should do this deal. And knowing that it's going to cost the company and themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars, and know that we're going to celebrate that as much as we are the closing. And so we're always looking for creative ways to highlight those kinds of decisions because those are much harder to make than closing the deal. And so we have to find ways to celebrate and honor that.
Right, right. What's been like the most challenging and like stretching season in your career? Because you've owned your company now, well, like about a little over a decade. Um, and a lot's happened in this past decade too. What do you feel like it really revealed to you, even internally with your business?
I think the hardest season for me, we started the company in 2014, and from 2014 to about 2017, I feel like I was trying to figure out what we were. And it wasn't to solve everyone's problems.
Right.
We weren't the best for everybody. And realizing that that was okay and focusing on the ones that we were. And so we really had to get better at saying no to certain things and then
Yeah.
intentionally pursuing the ones where we could add the most value. And so turning down things that maybe they would look good for our own ego because we got signs everywhere. Maybe it would look good because we were looking like we were growing,
Hmm.
but intentionally growing based on the right projects, assignments, and clients, as well as team members. it took a little while to learn that. There was some
Yeah.
maturing that we went through as a company to realize it's not a numbers game. And how many people on your team, how many properties, who cares? It's how effective being. Are we getting things done?
Are
And
your
it took,
numbers showing it, right?
and then the numbers showed it later, but it took a little bit of growing up to realize that.
I think that's a really good point. Like, I think 3 years is a real startup of any business. It's just such an early season to really get things kind of figured out. And I feel like by really like year 5, you're pretty much sailing pretty well, and you got a lot of kinks out.
Yeah, I do think that it's kind of like raising kids, right?
Totally.
There you're like, I'm so sleep deprived, I have no clue what's going on, and they can't
Right.
survive without me.
Right.
Year 5, they're a little bit more independent. They're going off to school and can make themselves a sandwich, and you're like, all right, I'm getting a little bit of my life back.
Yeah.
Every year, you're like a little bit more independent, a little more freedom. They have a little bit more personality. It really mirrors raising kids.
I agree with you. I mean, because even like the people you deal with, like you can even categorize their age depending on how they're acting.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I've dealt with a lot of 2-year-olds that have tantrums, and I just sit and I don't say anything and I let them have their tantrum. And then when they're done, we could talk professionally. It's a really good analogy. So when you're up against high stake decisions that you've got to make, whether, it's business, with anything in business, whether it's people, finance, marketing, et cetera, how do you, because there's something that's come at you where you're like, no, and you're like heart sinking. How do you like personally balance like logic with your intuition? Because those are two different things, right?
That's a good question. I wish I knew the perfect answer to that because I'm still
Mhm.
figuring it out daily. But I do value very much. I have a business partner and going through and talking through things with him. And I'll be like, am I approaching this emotionally? And let me talk through this and then let's make a decision tomorrow if in that kind of thing. And that's been so important for me to have someone to be able to talk to about things like that and has relieved me of a lot of stress. So balancing that with reacting, but also at the same time, you want to balance on the counter side, you want to be able to leap when it's the time to leap and there's an opportunity. And so you want to make sure you have a team in place that'll celebrate both the restraint as well as the jump, and that the team knows you well enough to trust you when
Mhm.
it's time to do one or the other.
Right.
Okay, yeah, we're going to leap because this is the direction we want to go. And we don't have it all figured out. We're going to go for it and figure it out as we go versus another time they might be really excited. They're like, we're going to leap, right? And you're like, no, no, this time we're going to hold back and we're going to make sure someone else handles that because we're not the right team for it. And that can be confusing. The more they get to know you, the more they'll trust that intuition. And sometimes I get it wrong, but we do
Yeah,
our
and
best.
and sometimes we have all ignored our inner knowing, like our intuition, what our heart says. Like we want to, keep using our left. I don't know if there's anything big you've ever ignored where you knew but you didn't do it, and what did that teach you?
Yeah, I can point back that most of the decisions I made where I was like, I'm leaping, I'm growing, I'm doing what I need to do, and that it didn't work out well, were usually based on my own vanity
Mm,
and my own desire to promote myself and my
mhm.
own image for my own look. And so I realized that if I can keep that in check, and what are my true motivations for doing this? It's because it's what's best for the organization and my family and everyone, or is it because I want some accolades or recognition? And knowing where my motivations lie will usually tell me if that leap that I'm wanting to make is with the right intent and if it'll have me land flat on my face or if
Right.
we'll go in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you're a woman of faith and I am too. And where does that weave in to your life and business? Because sometimes we can't get answers from the partner or mentor, right? We have to go to a higher source, to a higher source.
I'll give you an example. One of the things is one, it gives you a very long term perspective. So, in that regard, it makes everything easy because failure is temporary, right?
Right.
And so, the worst thing that can happen doesn't feel that bad anymore when you pull back and you look at it from an eternal perspective. And so, in that regard, it makes life really easy. But it is a little bit challenging sometimes when you feel a pull or a push in a different direction. You're like, all right, is this a faith thing or is this me, right? And that's where I have to check. Is it my vanity? And I think a really good example sometimes, like one of my favorite stories to share on that was when starting the company, right? And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. This doesn't, my own vanity is saying I need to stay in this position because I finally earned my stripes as an investment sales agent. I'm one of the few females in the state. I think I was the only female agent in the state at that time. I was out at that firm. I was so proud of myself, but I felt this pull and I was like, it looks like I failed in investment sales if I leave. It looks like I didn't do well. And so I
Yeah.
kind of put that in God's hands. And I was like, all right, I'm putting some conditions in place, thinking I'm wiser than everyone else. And I remember my business partner now, he was like, what are your conditions? What are they? And I said, well, one, it was very hard to find my kid's school, my 6 month old at the time. And I love the preschool. I'm happy with it. It's expensive. If I'm leaving on my source of income, I got to figure that piece out. He's like, okay, what's your next one? I said, I'm not going to just hang a shingle. I want to start a company. So I want a real office. And he said, well, what's the budget? I said, $0. I got nothing, right? And he's like, okay, so those are your conditions? And I said, yeah. And I kid you not, within a week, my son's school called me and said, hey, we're planning on opening up a second location. We're running into difficulties negotiating this lease. Can you help us? And at the time, I said, I can only do sales. My firm won't let me do leasing, but I'm happy to advise. So I helped them through that. They get the deal done. And they're like, how can we pay you? And I was like, no, don't worry about it. You're my kid's school. It's fine. And they're like, no, no, we insist. And we talked about it. We're going to give you a year's worth of tuition. Then I had to pause a little bit because I was like,
Right.
that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Who gets free daycare, right? And I mentioned it to my business partner, and he's like, "Oh, that's cute. What was your other condition?" And so we went and talked to a client that day. And the client had been insisting that I leave too. He's like, "San Antonio really needs this." And he was like, "Well, where are you going to office if you do that?" And I said, "I don't know. Do you know anything cheap?" And he's like, "You can office here for free for a year." And it was an office building right next to my son's daycare. And
Awesome.
so we started it that week. I left and announced it without anything. And so what was cool about that is that I feel really one ashamed that I didn't have enough faith that I needed that proof, right? But at
Yeah.
the same time, I was so grateful for it because when time got really, really rough in the years that followed, I
Yeah.
could point back to that and be like, it would be stupid of me to think that this wasn't where I'm supposed to be because of
Right.
that. That was so obvious.
Yeah. The
And so it was
synchronicities are unreal.
reassurance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what is really good to point out with that lesson that you learned is the fact that you verbally, and it's not like you're praying, but you verbally spoke out loud the three things that you wanted to make it happen. And the fact that you did, it was heard, right? So it's like you surrendered it, and then it's like stuff starts happening, like manifesting, and it manifested relatively quickly, really.
Yeah, it really did. And that to me was just like a shock that this was clearly where I was supposed to be. And
Right.
the vanity of feeling like I had failed in investment sales to move into leasing and management was silly now in retrospect. But at the time, it felt like a really big deal. So again, I learned if I'm making a decision to protect my own image and vanity, it's probably not the right choice.
Right. Right. And that's, I think, another word for vanity is ego. That's what's trips too many people up. And I think, especially when you're younger, you make the mistake a lot.
Yeah,
So,
very guilty.
yeah, that's really good points. So, switching gears to, mentorship, and really to me, it's like a legacy project too, not just Foresight, but CRE Launch program. And where, what year did you come up with it? And how fast, when you came up with the idea, did you even implement it? Like, what gave you that inspiration? And then how fast did it launch? And then where is it went from there?
Yeah, it's kind of went in phases. So I'll tell you, when I was with my third child, um, the company was very young still. We were 4 years in, 3 or 4 years in, and we were trying to get a hold of turnover and training and growth and all of the things that you deal with as an entrepreneur. And suddenly I had gotten the news that my child I was expecting was expected to be delivered with severe complications. And I was scared. I had this company I needed to run and people that depended on me and I needed that income, but also I realized I'm probably going to be a special needs mom and I have to go spend a lot of time at the hospital if he makes it. And so I was preparing for all these things. Fast forward, he was born perfectly healthy, praise God. But
Yeah, praise God
I
is
didn't
right.
know time. And so extremely hard to document everything I was doing into a learning management system. writing an LOI, negotiating a contract, preparing this marketing material, how to approach a client, scripts. I mean, anything you can think of. And it was my hit by the bus plan. And so without sharing too much with the team, I worked very, very hard as to develop these systems. And anytime someone came to me with a question, I'd be like, check to see if it's in the learning management system. And they'd go back and they'd check, okay, it's still not clear, and I'd edit it. So we ended up with this great learning management system, and my son was healthy. And I noticed this great thing happen, and that was that our turnover got reduced, my stress level decreased. The
Mhm.
business started running like a business,
Right.
and it was able to grow and scale. And so I was really excited by that. Fast forward to 2020, and I noticed a lot of people on LinkedIn
Mhm.
saying that they were losing their internships, college students, and they needed those internship hours to graduate. And I felt really bad for them because I was like, man, you worked that hard and then your internship gets pulled for you because of COVID. And
Right.
so very impulsively, I wrote online, hey, if you have any interest in commercial real estate at all, if you don't know what it is, that's fine too, kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
we're going to open up our learning management system and host a virtual internship for you all if anyone is interested, and I can sign off on your hours. And I thought I might get 5 or 6. And we ended up with 2 back-to-back classes of 20 that year.
Oh,
And
wow.
what was really cool is people came out of that program and stayed in the business. I fell in love with the industry. And I realized, okay, this is pretty cool. We can actually attract people into the business the way tech and all of these other industries do.
Right.
We need to be reaching them early and exposing them to it. And then, you talk about culture of a firm and learning who we are. Well, we learned we love to teach. And so
Yeah.
the whole company got behind it, and property management and accounting, and we started expanding it. And then locally, our competitors asked, can we put our people through it? And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, but yeah,
Yeah.
why not? Okay, cool. So then it grew to the point where we debranded it about 2 or 3 years ago. And we no longer had it called anything with Foresight. We called it CRE Launch. We had its own website, its own systems, everything. And we started partnering up with other brokerage firms and other organizations and even universities in other markets. And this year, we're going to have 12 campuses across the United States. And we'll be serving over 100 students all across the United States. And it's a very intensive 10-week program with rankings, and they compete against each other. And it's pretty intensive. But it is so rewarding because we get to meet past alumni and see them working in the industry all throughout the United States. And it is incredibly gratifying.
That is. And do you want to say which cities that it's going to be in this year for
Yeah.
2026?
I'm going to pull up the list. I don't say I'm all wrong.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
Just so people know. And also, you can do this virtually, which is amazing as well. But there's host offices in 12 cities.
Yeah, we encourage people as much as possible to do it in person because I do feel like this business depends very heavily on networks, and we want to help
Right.
people establish those networks.
Right.
So the physical locations are San Antonio, Atlanta, Austin, Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Fort Lauderdale, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, Tampa, Nashville, as well as a virtual cohort.
Awesome. Kind of switching gears with, people who build lasting careers from those who burn out and walk away. Cause I think like right now is like a really challenging time in brokerage. I wouldn't say property management, but because I do property management as well. But I feel like, brokerage has been really challenging since 2022 with inflation, lack of new construction. I realize you being in Texas, there's definitely way more new construction than I think anywhere in the United States. But it's not like at the rate it used to be, and not even close. And people burn out and they want to quit. And what do you think separates those that last and don't? Because you didn't start when I was in the industry. Like I was in the recession too. So now I'm in my second yucky period.
Yeah, I do have a lot of empathy for that. I started in the industry in 2003, but I went commission only in 2008.
So you hit the recession.
Horrible timing. And I
Okay.
decided I'm going to sell shopping centers commission only. Like that's stupid. Suicide.
Hmm.
And so I do feel a lot of empathy for brokers that are going through that challenge because one of the reasons why I even got on social media was to share the story of my failure to launch or how difficult my transition into brokerage was because I was so worried seeing all of these people touting on social media about, look at this huge check I got and I did this in 6 months. And I was like, this isn't real. This business is hard. And my big fear was someone's going to read that and quit and think that this business isn't for them because they didn't have the same story.
Right.
So I just randomly got on and shared my story of going 3 years with no pay and my first check being 50 cents because I owed so much in training fees and legal fees. And then I was extra feisty, so I never even cashed it because I wanted to make their, bank reconciliations on that. So I
Yeah.
was feisty. And I kept it, and it's still, hanging on my wall. But I share that story as often as I can because I want people to know that if you don't have this great launch, that doesn't mean the business isn't for you. You have to look really long term. And so I think what separates people that make it and don't make it is the only difference is one group quit and the other group didn't. If you stick with it long enough, you will find success. Ability to withstand pain for a prolonged period of time, you can eventually make it. Not saying like I've made it, but you understand what I'm saying.
No, I mean, you're making a living, you're supporting your family. I mean, there's a couple players out there that you could think that have been honest about that it could take 3 years to get a check because people don't realize this is commission only, but there's a big reward once you hit and you're
Yes.
in the flow.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful business. I love it. And I
Mhm.
especially like to see ladies in it because I'm like, man, once you get established, what a great
What
career while you have
you
family.
you can't beat it. You
I
really
never
can't.
miss that kid's field trip,
Mhm.
and it's been a wonderful blessing to the family. So I don't like seeing people quit. And I always tell people just don't give up. And I had a great mentor that encouraged me at moments where I was ready to walk away.
Mhm.
And, I think that that's really important. So who you surround yourself with is really key.
For sure. And was your mentor someone who worked with you in the office or outside of the office?
In the office. So at the firm that I worked with, that was an investment sales firm. After I was
Mhm.
a property manager and went into investment sales,
Okay.
the firm that I went to work for pairs you up with mentors. And I was originally going to work in the office product type exclusively,
Mhm.
and there wasn't anyone to pair me up with. There was this guy there that seemed really even keeled. He talked glowingly about his wife and his family.
Yeah.
And you could just tell he had the respect of clients because
Yeah.
he respected them. And I switched and I said, okay, I'll learn retail so that he can be my mentor. And he became my mentor both from a business standpoint as required by the firm, but also throughout life.
Yeah.
And then later, he's the one that encouraged me to start the firm. And now we run it together.
Which is awesome. That's amazing. And there's such a good guys out there. Like I know, there's good people and bad people, but the good ones are amazing. And I've had some major help as well, like starting my company from various men that were selfless.
Yes. That's a great way
Yeah.
to describe it.
Yeah. How do you stay grounded while carrying on the responsibility for other people's growth in the office? Because they're like your kids.
Yeah, they are. And I get really emotionally invested into them. I think last night was a really good example because I'm sitting in bed and I'm texting and
Hmm.
I was dealing with a family situation with a loved one that's dealing with a really terrible diagnosis.
I'm
And
sorry.
so I'm texting and my husband's like, are you texting them and checking in on them? I said, yes, I did that. But I'm also alternating between texting because one of the agents in the office just lost a deal. And it was the deal that they needed to stay in the game. And I'm trying to talk them off the ledge.
Hmm.
So yeah, you're balancing. I want to be a good family member and I
Right.
want to be a good mentor,
Yeah.
and their livelihood depends on it. Their emotional well-being depends on it. So yeah, you're trying to balance being something for everybody.
Right.
And I haven't figured it out. I just say I'm just doing the best I can. And
Right.
I'm gonna
No.
drop the ball and I'm not gonna be the greatest sister, daughter, whatever one day
Yeah.
day I'm gonna be knocking it out of the park as a mom, but failing as a business owner. I don't know what to tell y'all. I'm just gonna do the best I can.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good reminder because I think a lot of people are perfectionists. A lot of women think too they have to be perfect, and there's no perfect world, perfect life, perfect marriage, perfect kids,
Yeah,
perfect business, and you just really got to like again surrender and do the best you can on a daily basis in the now.
that's
Don't
true.
look back, don't look forward. I really feel that I motherhood has shaped me into a totally different person than I was prior. Like, and I noticed that too with a lot of people who work for me. Like when you see them get married, not much is going to change, but it's when you have kids, usually the switch turns on. How like has becoming a mother shaped the way like you lead and define success? Because I'm sure it's way different than probably when you were 23.
I'll say like I love working in like the male dominated industry, being the only girl in the office,
Yeah.
locker room talk didn't bother me. And I kind of heard as badge of honor. until I had the baby. And something shifted in me, right? So I definitely know that it does change when you have kids. And within my own office, I realized that it's really a cool opportunity and an honor because if the mom or the dad doesn't enjoy their career and where they work, they can carry that back home.
Oh, yeah.
And so making sure that people can enjoy where they work and feel fulfilled, be well compensated, but also enjoy how they spend their day, they carry that back home and it impacts the kids and the next generation. And I love hearing when the kids are like that they want to come to the office with their parents. We have a kids room here. So people will bring their kids in after school and stuff in between meetings. And I love that the kids want to come hang out and they feel like that's. I also feel like because we have kids in the office, it has been an incredible barrier for hiring. A litmus test is a better word for hiring because we don't want to hire people we don't want our own kids around. And so it reinforces this really great policy of no jerks allowed. Because we don't
Right.
want our kids to turn into jerks. So if
No.
someone's got a bad mouth and they're
Mhm.
negative and they're
Yeah.
difficult and they're being sneaky or they are using a lot of vulgar language, yeah, we don't really want that around our kids. And so that has reflected back into our culture. It's been kind of interesting how that's worked out. And it's been
That's
really
like a
special.
wicked smart idea because that does filter out the
But it
worst of the
worked.
worst. Because like, the exact people you don't want your kids to ever grow up as.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's been a couple of times where I've kind of had to pause and been like, I think we have an issue here. And we're not following our protocol, like in our minds, right? Like that was what we said. Do we believe that? So I think that's really cool. And I tell people that a lot because I get asked by other firms, like, how can I attract more women to the workforce? And I say, picture walking into your office with your daughter. Does she feel comfortable? Do you have to cover her ears? Do
Yeah.
you have to walk her around and explain things? Are you hoping that that one guy in the office didn't show up that day?
Yeah.
There's your answer. You need to
Right.
make sure that's an office that your daughter can walk in, and that's how you can attract more women.
Right. We still have a long way to go, but I'm grateful that there there are people doing it, right? Got to start somewhere. I believe like your reflection at work and at home is equivalent. Like if you don't have a good home life, you're also not going to perform well at work either. So your relationships are everything and your
Yeah.
environment. How do you connect with yourself when life and business is super demanding? So getting to just being whole by yourself. What do you do?
Good question. Still learning. I will say that I do notice that everything falls apart if I don't protect my sleep.
Oh, okay.
And so there is the temptation to pull the all-nighters like college and things like that.
Mhm.
And every now and then, a couple times a year, I might do that. But I try not to do that because I realize that if I'm operating at 20% effectiveness because I didn't get a good night's sleep,
Mhm.
to just slept more and operated at 100% and gotten it done in 3 hours.
Yeah.
I've learned about myself that I do not work well when I'm not well rested or fed because I'm mean when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So
Me
I
too.
try to put those barriers in place and make sure that I do protect sleeping and getting a good amount of sleep.
Glad you're even saying that because sleep is so vital, and I don't think, and I notice this too with like kids and teens, like they sleep a lot, and then they'll hit college and they don't, and then it trickles into your 20s, and it's so unhealthy. I mean, in
No,
every way, shape, or form for you, and the fact that you can prioritize your sleep, your schedule, raise 3 kids, you're married, you've got a lot, and you got to take care of yourself too. I mean, it shows that you can do it. I don't wanna say you can do it all. I kinda, like, hate that cliche because, not everything's even keeled, but you can do it all. It's just budgeting it in.
it was close to impossible when I was raising infants, right?
Of course. Oh
It
my
was a season.
god, yeah.
That's the line, right? That I just had to repeat to myself. I was like, it's a season, but
Yeah.
wow, that was awful. And
Yeah,
I didn't
it was
like who I
horrible.
was and who I was becoming. And then I realized there was a little bit of a litmus test for me there too. And that was how far have I pushed it? And have I gone too far? And for me, the realization I've gone too far and I need to pull back is when I've lost empathy. And that is kind of my
Yeah.
internal metric that if I feel hasty and rude and difficult and I'm combative and I'm losing the empathy for the people on the other side or the people that I'm working with, especially, or even strangers, then I'm doing something wrong. And it is time to slow down because we're spiraling.
Yeah, that's a really I love the fact that you're using the word empathy because that's true. Like when you're snapping, getting crazy, that's when you really need to like put yourself in a timeout. Yeah, even my daughter at school, it's so funny. It's such a young age at 9. I mean, she's not 9 now, she's 14. But I remember she said to me, Mommy, she said, I notice whenever the teachers come back after they have a baby, they're really mean.
Tired.
And I'm like, well, they're probably not sleeping, justifying it. But yeah, oh my God. Okay. So, what do you like? What belief about success do you no longer subscribe to?
I don't really know. I can't think of an example. I think of the typical metrics of success of being financial and all of those things were probably things that I thought about early on, and I don't really view that as success anymore. To me, success
Mm,
is now freedom.
I agree
And freedom can come through finances, but it
for
can
sure.
also come through control over time and the ability to turn down things that you don't want to work on or the people you don't want to work with. And to me, that freedom is far greater than anything any financial stuff can bring.
Huge. What we did touch on women and wanting to attract more women in the business because of the flexibility and the financial gains that you can gain being a broker. But what is r- like a truth you'd want to share with women building careers just in male dominated spaces in general, whether you're in business, a doctor, whatever. What do you feel they should know?
I'd say less people are focused on you and your gender than you think about. Like
Mm,
we probably think about that a whole lot more than any of the guys in the room and just get your work done and don't make it so much of your identity to the point where it holds you back because you feel like you need permission from everyone else and validation from everyone else. Just do the job better than anyone else. And nobody really cares about the gender as much as you do.
I agree with that. There's a very few out there that still care about gender, but I think they're slowly
It can
easing out of.
become a little bit of a crutch if we admit it. Early on in
Yeah.
the careers, we think about it a little bit more than we should. And is it because I'm a female? Did I miss out on that opportunity because of that? Maybe if I were a guy, dump all of that. None of that is helpful at all. Just keep working and it works out in the end.
I agree because there's someone that's gonna see you're like a shining star and put you way on top. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you're value, people will keep you close. I think a really fun
Yeah.
example of that is like my very first job. The guy that I worked for was a very traditionalist, and our dress code included that we had to wear nylons and skirts, no pants allowed. Nothing with a zipper. You could wear pants on Fridays, nothing with a zipper. It was like a very old school kind of a guy and the roles that women were in. However, as he saw the things that I could do for him, he didn't care because I was going to make him money.
Exactly.
He didn't care.
And that's why they're at work.
And I
I
got
mean,
promoted.
not everyone's at work to make friends. I mean, they're there to run a business and make money, and that's what most of the guys I think are looking for,
I think the thing that holds us back the most sometimes as females are the stories we tell ourselves in our mind.
for sure. The
Like
scripts.
these scenarios in our heads,
Yeah.
and they think that, and they don't like me, or this is that. No one's thinking any of that. Just
Yeah.
let it go. The guys aren't putting that much thought into it. Just keep going.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I had actually a guy tell me, and I love this piece of advice. He's like, "Tell yourself in your head to shut up." Meaning, because you're talking about the running scripts, and he's
Yes.
like, "Just tell them to shut up every time it comes." He's like, "I
Yeah,
tell myself to just shut the F up." I'm like, "Okay."
I would agree with that.
Um, so what's like your final piece of advice for just becoming like whole, like in mind, body, spirit, so like you can like live and lead like as your best self in life and business?
Yeah, for me, it's very hard to separate faith from who I am. So I would say leaning on God and our identity and who He is probably the key for me. But I always love the biggest thing for me and my life has always been relying on that verse. It says, in my weakness, you are strong, right? And so I will boast of my weaknesses all the more. Well, I love that
Yeah.
concept because then I don't have to be insecure about what I know or I don't know. And I picture it like a sponge.
Mhm.
And you think if you pour resin over it, it's going to be really hard because of the holes in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where the boasting and the weaknesses comes from that I am nothing. But if I rely on my faith in God, I can become a pretty solid brick here and to lay some foundation on. And it's not because of who I am, it's because of who He is and me.
Exactly. It's your soul. Yeah. Um, well, I really appreciate you coming on. And can you just tell everyone where they can find you?
Sure. Definitely on LinkedIn, definitely on Twitter or X too much. And you can find out about the CRE launch program at cre-launch.com and our website for the company at foresitecre.com. It's about foresight with a pun intended of being site selection.
Well, I want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of the Tori Nook Show. And you can catch all the new episodes across all the podcast platforms and YouTube at Tori Nook. If you enjoyed this conversation, please hit subscribe. Please leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And please rate and review. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.